Well, hello everyone, welcome back to my lab. Today I'm going to show you how to install magnetic body mounts. Well, before we get too much further, and as always, I would just like to take a second and say thank you very much for stopping in and taking a look at another one of my videos. And if this does benefit you, do please give me a thumbs up and a subscription. That would really help me out. Well, with that out of the way, what you see on the table here is the RMX 2.0 drift car. This is the RTR version, as well as our clipless body mount hardware and some tools to assemble it. Now, this is a very simple process, and this will work on a lot of models, so you may have to do a little bit of tweaking to the assembly in this end, but I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and organize what we have here. We have 4 shorter screws, we have 4 longer screws, we have 4 countersunk screws, 2 set screws, some shims. We have our mounting posts, as well as our conversion pieces here. We have our magnetic mounts themselves and our front adapters here, as well as our magnets. Now, Philip from the future here. Now, as I got further along in the assembly of this, I realized I forgot to mention something fairly important as we move forward through the video, is that there are only enough screws in this kit to assemble the kit itself, but not mount the rear mounts to the back of the car here. So you'll see in the video I'm going to use the screws that came with the kit in order to mount this assembly to the back of the car. But in fact, you'll need to use the screws that came with your kit originally, the screws that were used to mount your original body mounts. Now on the magnets on this particular kit, you'll notice that there are 2 different style of magnets here. There's some thinner ones and thicker ones, and there's also some with the holes. Now I like to go ahead and mount these ones with the holes to our magnetic body mounts themselves. So we always do that with our countersunk screw. Countersunk screws, I don't know how well this will come out on camera, but countersunk screws will have kind of a cone shape to them. So that's the countersunk style of screw that we use. And we'll just simply install those into the little threaded slots of our mount here. So again, we'll take another countersunk screw. Now on the back one on this particular car, we're going to wait to install these magnets, and I'll show you why as soon as we get to that point. So the magnets are already installed in that one. Now on the back, we're going to go ahead and start assembling before we put our magnets on our mount, because the screws will get in the way when we do that. So we're going to use some of the longer screws here. And we're going to use these posts that do not have the hole in the top. So this one right here is for a different component, and these are going to be the ones we're going to be using here. We're going to go ahead and start installing those, not in the original body mount here, but in these holes that are located more centrally, rather. We'll go ahead and start threading those screws in. Now when I mount these, you'll notice that these posts have some measurement markings on them. I'm going to move those measurements up so that we can locate those for our final assembly. And we'll tighten up our screws. Now these conversion pieces, these are designed to slip over top of the post here so that we can get our vertical post going. Now before we do that, we do want to see where this magnetic mount lines up. So you see this magnetic mount is located in between these posts here. So we'll need to mount our converters so that they are aiming in. So we want to aim them toward the center of the car, not away from the center of the car. This is incorrect. This is correct. And I'm going to use the longer screws. And the same thing on this one. Now that I have these mounted here, you'll notice that I have the screw a little bit countersunk down inside of this converter. If we flip this over, the screw head will be on top of it. It won't be countersunk, reliefed down into the inside. And I want to draw your attention to the back here. You'll notice on this one right here that has that same relief, and this one does not. So a little prior planning here will make things easier for you for your final adjustment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this one upside down so that you'll have that relief. That way you can access both of the screws from the back here. Now that that is finished, I'm going to put my shorter screws in the backs of these converters so that I can put the vertical post in. The vertical posts also have those same markings, so I like to point those backward as a personal preference. This way I can see them for a final adjustment. And you'll notice during assembly of this, I'm not paying close attention to how these are adjusted. I'm just kind of getting them mounted for that final adjustment later. Now with these mounted, I will take my magnetic mount here itself, and you'll see that that lines up really nicely with those posts. So we won't need any additional spacers in order to get those lined up well. Now if we use the little silver spacers that come with these kits. We will put them in between the mounts here in order to get them properly spaced. We want to try to avoid putting a lot of pressure on these mounts. I keep dropping that piece there. We want to avoid putting a lot of pressure on these mounts so that they are skewed inward like this here, because that can cause things to break. But fortunately in this car they line up really well. So from here we want to take our shorter screws, not the longer ones. We use the longer ones here. We use the shorter screws because the screw has to go through this way. And this is where we have a problem when we mount our magnets, because the screw to mount the magnets will come really close to that screw head. That's why we waited to mount those magnets onto here. So now that we're moving forward, I'm just going to mount the screw through the inside and into the mount here. And again, you can see why we use the shorter screw, because that screw is not poking out. We'll do the same thing on this side. And then stand up our mount here. Now this is the point that we can use those countersunk screws that we had from before and mount the magnets to our mount. Now with our magnets mounted, you can see what I mean here by the screws. I don't know how well that's coming out on camera, but you see the screw that's coming down vertically is almost impacting the head of the screw that goes horizontally. So that's why, again, we've waited to mount those magnets until last. Now that our rear mounts are finished, we're going to work on the front ones, and the front ones will be even easier than the rear ones are. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to grab our little front adapter pieces here, and we'll need to grab one of our set screws. There's a one threaded hole in here, so we'll loosely thread the set screw in here. Same thing on this side. We'll thread the set screw in here. And then we'll install the adapter onto the vehicle. Now we're going to install these quite high on the body mounts because we'll still need to get a screw through the hole there. And once we have the screw kind of mounted already, we will do our final adjustment once we get ready to mount the body. Now with these pieces, as you see facing toward each other, we're going to install our magnetic mount, or attempt to install our magnetic mount. And you'll notice that when we go to install this, there's not very much gap between the mount and the adapter pieces. So in the front, we won't need any adapters, just like in the rear. Now if we had this big gap in here, where I'm pulling this apart so you can see the large gap, this is where we would use these spacers to fill in the gap. But in this car, that won't be necessary. So now we'll just kind of pre-install our screws here, because this makes things a little easier to get them lined up. And finally thread them in place. And for the standpoint of our body mounts themselves, those are installed. Well, hopefully you can see how easy it is to install magnetic body mounts onto an RC car. And if you've benefited from this video in any way, do please consider giving me a thumbs up and a subscription. That would really help me out. Well, that'll wrap it up for this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.